Hey guys, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So today the video entails talking about the story about the keys of the Kaaba, which were given to Uthman ibn Talha. But to get to this point, I want to share a little bit of a background story. Um, so when the hijrah, or the migration from Mecca to Medina, began, the very first person to make this migration was a man by the name of Abu Salama, and he was not from the people of Makkah. He was not from the Quraysh. But his wife, Salama, she was from the Quraysh. And they had a young child, and they made the intention to make the hijrah from Makkah to Medina when, to leave the land of the oppressed Makkah at the time and go to an area where they were able to practice their religion freely. And so when it came time for Abu Salama and Salama to make the hijrah, since Abu Salama was not from the Quraysh, he had no problems leaving, and they basically, said, that's fine, you can go, but we're not going to let you take Salama. She is from the Quraysh, and there's this whole bit of nationalism and tribalism that went on in there. And so, and Abu Salama was basically forced to leave, and Salama was kept in house. And they also kept the baby, the young child between the two, also in Makkah with the Quraysh. And so, tribalism came more into force, and the tribe of Abu Salama came, and they basically then took the baby away from the Quraysh and said, we're going to keep the baby. And so now all three family members are separated. Abu Salama is in Medina, Salama is in Makkah, and their child is with the family of Abu Salama. And finally, it got to a point where, Salama was in severe depression, or she was very saddened that she was away from her husband, and she eventually got permission to be able to leave from her, the people in her family that took pity on her. And so she went and she took, she got to the tribe of her husband. She took their son, or their young child, and she was going to go to Medina. And if you've ever been to Makkah or Medina, it's quite a distance between the two. I mean, if you're driving by car, it's about 4 days, and this is 1400 years ago. If you're driving by car, it's 4 hours about. So if 1400 years ago, this is like a journey of days, maybe a couple weeks. And so Salama has her child, and she's, she left her tribe, and she's going to go to Makkah. And she really, she is a woman by herself with a young child in the middle of a desert. And what ends up happening is she's like, well, she has her faith in Allah, and she doesn't know, and so she sets out on it, and she doesn't really know how she's going to do it, but she's determined to do it. And so she starts her journey to Medina, and basically, she reaches a little bit outside, her Makkah, and she's on en route, and this guy comes along, and his name is Uthman ibn Talha. This guy is not Muslim at this point. He is just somebody who's from Makkah, and he's like, what are you doing? You're a lady, you're a young woman with a young child. What are you doing out here in the middle of nowhere by yourself, unaccompanied, And she's like, well, I'm going to Medina. I need to join my husband there. And so this guy, he's a young gentleman. He's like, well, he has this honor. He's like, no, that's not going to happen. That's not acceptable. That's not appropriate. I am going to take you there. And so he basically accompanies and guides Salama all the way to Medina. And like I said, this is not a short journey. This is not for us, it's a 4-hour drive. Imagine what it was 1400 years ago. And so he basically takes her, and Salama, when she narrates or talks about this incident, she talks about how respectful this man was. And he wasn't making small talk with her. He wasn't looking at her or anything. He was very much, very professional, very sincere, and respectful. That's the word I was looking for. He was very respectful of her. And so and this guy's not Muslim. Remember this. Uthman ibn Talha is not Muslim at this point. Yet still he had the dignity and honor and respect to be to first accompany her all the way to Medina, and second of all, to be very respectful. Like, for example, when it would come time to rest or to sleep, he would sleep separate from her. He would sleep next to the camel, and he would accompany her to an area of shade or somewhere. And so that he was very, very respectful. And so Salama was, she was very, very, I guess, impressed with his character in this setting. Okay, and so she accompanies him, and she joins Abu Salama in Medina, and the family is reunited. And the story of Abu Salama and Salama, is a different tangent. And so let's go back to Uthman ibn Talha. So Uthman ibn Talha then, he goes on living his life, and he lives a number of years as a non-Muslim. Remember, the story of Abu Salama is the first muhajir. He's the first guy to leave Makkah and go to Medina. So this is, year 1 Hijrah, or year 0, one before Hijrah, or year 1 Hijrah, right? And Uthman ibn Talha does not become Muslim for many years, actually. He continued living his life, and then he converts to Islam as the last batch of converts before the conquest of Makkah. So he is in this last batch of converts. He's in the same batch as Khalid ibn Walid, who would become a major force for the Muslim army. He became a leader of the Muslim army during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So he's in this last batch of converts before the conquest of Makkah, and he's honored. And so when the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims, they conquer Makkah back in the conquest of Makkah, at a time of great joy for the Muslims, the spoils, or gifts are being given out. And there's certain gifts that have to be given out, after the Muslims conquer Makkah. And one of the gifts is the keys to the Kaaba. And the Prophet ﷺ gives the keys to the Kaaba to Ali to give to Uthman ibn Talha. And this is a way of honoring Uthman ibn Talha. And so Uthman ibn Talha was given the keys to the Kaaba, and he kept them at that. And even now, 1400 years later, the people that have the keys to the Kaaba are his descendants. It's passed down from his family generation to generation to generation. And obviously this is more of a symbolic, here the keys to the Kaaba. But even now, like for example, when something needs to be done with the Kaaba in Makkah, from my understanding, it is, the family is still called, and it is still very much respected. So I thought that was a really cool story when I heard, and so I just wanted to share it with you. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Thank you for listening. Take home points, take home messages. Obviously, always be respectful, always have good character, and that will be honored. And you do good, you'll see good, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.